I was always really good at the sciences. I absolutely love science. I could actually stay engaged.
It's weird because you don't even believe in it, right? No.
Yeah, 100%, dude. Yeah, I reject it all now.
And welcome to Growing Up Christian. I'm Casey.
I'm Sam.
And today we're here with our first and possibly most controversial guest. Old friend from college, known internet warrior, Chad Daniels.
He'll destroy anybody in a Reddit.
That's right.
Argument.
That's right. Anti-social justice warrior.
Yeah.
Social justice pacifist.
That's right.
Oh.
Man, so we all know each other from college.
Yep.
And I'm sorry.
Okay, it's been about 10 years since we've all talked on the same line at the same time or been in the same room together. Like Casey said, we became friends in college, and we we've loosely stayed in touch through like random conversations here and there. You and Casey have definitely stayed in touch a bit more than you and I have, but I've had a couple random visits to Lynchburg where we get together, whatever. But
yep, for sure. Yeah, and I think the last time you and I talked, I was up in Boston. Was that 2018 or 17?
No, dude, you did not tell me. I knew you were coming to Boston. We definitely didn't see each other when you were here. Oh, no. I see what you're talking about.
I stayed at your house, remember?
Yeah. I thought you meant, that was because that was definitely more than 2 years ago, dude. That was like...
That must have been 17. That was a year my buddy hiked the Appalachian Trail, and we I flew up to Maine to hike the last mountain with him, and then we...
5 years, dude. I mean, I've been in my house the house I'm in now, I've been in for over 3. I spent like 9 months in my in-laws' basement, and then that was before that. I was in the house that you stayed with me at. So like that's
been more than 3. Holy cow!
Because Byron was with us at that. You met Byron, my foster son, and he's living with us again. He's like he's almost 18. So I mean, he was like 13, maybe 12 or 13 at the time. So it's been a while.
Holy cow, man!
So you just jumped straight to the end of the Appalachian Trail and then like popped in.
Actually, it's great. Code? It's great. Game Shark.
A-B-B.
That's right. Konami code. No, so it was actually interesting. So one of the buddies that came down to, he moved to Lynchburg, 2010. And I met him when we were doing those, booking these shows at Cross Point. And he just like randomly started coming up to shows. And one day he found out that I did a lot of hiking and backpacking. And he was like, dude, I want to go backpacking. I took him out once, and within a year, he had quit his job and was hiking the entire Appalachian Trail. Like, totally blew me out of the water. But wow. we dropped him off in March of, I guess it was 2016. I guess that's when it was. Maybe 2015. Yeah, 2016 or so. We dropped him off in March. So I got pictures of me hiking the first mountain of the Appalachian Trail, and 6 months later, finished in Maine.
Dude, I'm so envious of people who have I don't know. I honestly can't tell if it's like a genetic thing to not care enough about things, to just be able to just quit your job and go for it. I mean, there's obviously certain aspects of your life that have to be conducive to that, but
right.
God, I'm so envious of people who made those choices. Like, I didn't do anything. I mean, in my life, I was the most unadventurous person ever.
Yeah. It's interesting because he was not always like that. This dude was like super straight laced. When I first met him, I was like, "Hey, dude, you want to come over and like have a beer and play some video games?" He's like, "Oh, dude, I don't drink." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's kind of weird." And then he like taught Dave Ramsey at his church. Was super responsible. Like, dude, he was like the typical Brentwood church LU guy. Like his ex-wife now went to Liberty, and then without spilling his laundry out here, he had some issues.
You haven't dropped his name, so it's fine.
We're not gonna. Well, he won't care anyway. He's open about it, but he had some issues with his marriage, and he was just like, okay, you know what? He's like, I got a whole bunch of money saved up. I'm gonna move to Ohio because I got a job opportunity out here. But I'm gonna take a year off and hike the Appalachian Trail. Just wanted to do it, and
wow.
And it's funny because like ever since then too, he had never had that mindset, but now, you know, his mindset now is, I mean, he hiked the Appalachian Trail, got a job working it's Casey. It's my buddy who works in the Mercedes dealership, Josh. I think you've met him before.
I remember you talking about him.
Yeah, so he worked at, you know, in the Mercedes dealership, made good money working on electric cars, and then 9 months later, he's like, "Dude, I'm going to hike the PCT," and went out and hiked from Washington State to about the middle of California. Dude, he was in such good shape. He said he was like hiking 45 miles a day or something like that.
God.
And he said he ended up blowing his knee out like out in the middle of nowhere, and like having to hike like I don't know the exact distance. You're talking like 80, 90 miles on like a destroyed knee. And that put him, that put him out of commission. And then this year, him and his wife, because he got remarried, him and his wife were going to go over to somewhere over in Europe, not Romania, Slovenia, and they were going to do like this like 2-month backpacking trip, and then COVID hit, and so he's like, all right, well, I guess I'll just bike across the state of Ohio, which then he did. So, dude,
I love it. I love when people have it in them to travel. Like I have, there are places that I just never even went to when I lived in Boston because I'm like, I don't really know how to take the T to get there. So,
right.
Like I don't have an adventurous bone in my body, so it's like the idea of like traveling to try, like we all have friends who have like done the whole like stayed in hostels and just gone across, I don't know, Europe, whatever. And you're just like, Joe McElroy, he got,
holy cow.
He got, but I mean, during the time that I really knew him, he got, his Christmas gift from his parents was like a rail pass in Europe or whatever. Yeah. And he was just like, cool, I'm going to do that for the summer. And then I would never find it in me to make my way anywhere. I would just be like, day one, I guess I'll curl up under the subway tunnel and die.
That's funny.
I feel like I'm on that plan, but instead of Europe, I'm just taking a dump in every dirty truck stop bathroom.
You travel a lot, though. You go out to Colorado, and I mean, you travel quite a bit by car anyway.
Try to, by car.
And you post some really amazing pictures of rest stop bathrooms. Those are pretty legendary, some of those.
Yeah. Well, I am passionate about certain things.
I told you could have made a lot of money making that an Instagram truck stop.
I really should have.
I know.
Yeah, I had to stop sharing them because now the ones that I'm taking pictures of, they're my customers.
Yeah.
And I have to mistake.
No one would know. Your customers aren't going to follow truck stop bathrooms. They're not.
No.
Right. Man. So, I guess we should start out with you just giving us a rundown. Give us like the abridged version of your life story, and just to kind of
start from your earliest memory.
So I know you said you drink beer. So
much.
Are you a practicing Christian or not so much?
Well, for all of the Baptists listening, I don't drink.
Which Baptist? Southern or regular?
There's none listening to this pagan podcast. I can assure you that, dude. So my life is probably similar to yours, Casey. So I grew up obvious. Where are
you from?
I'm from Pennsylvania. That's what I was going to say. Obviously, then I'm like, this is a podcast. The Pennsylvania, between Reading and Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So kind of Amish country. Very super. A lot of people don't know.
Is that where you got your beard?
Yes. I don't have that. I have a just stubble now. The beard I never got past that awkward length of the beard. It's like an inch long and sticks straight out.
I'm still rocking that. Mine's more Abe Lincoln-y is what most people have compared it to.
That's awesome.
But less full.
Yeah, that's funny. So it's like pubes.
Yeah, it just goes from my ears underneath I have no chin, so it just kind of like straddles my neck mostly.
It's funny.
Yeah, a Grecian butt crack.
That's right. So Lancaster, between Lancaster, Pennsylvania and Reading, PA, I don't know if anybody knows that, but that's actually a super, super conservative area of the country. I have just about the most Christian education possible. I went from to a private Christian school, just in like a non-denominational school from kindergarten to 4th grade. Then I was homeschooled 1 year. My mom couldn't take any more of that, and Gloria, yep, yep, yeah. Brenda knows, and then 6th grade to 9th grade, I went to a Bob Jones type Christian school. Yeah, like one of those schools is like affiliated with Bob Jones. So like literally, if you graduate from that school, I guess you get like a scholarship to either Bob Jones or Pensacola. I can't remember what. I think it was Bob Jones.
Okay, yeah, that was like the big one. I mean, they wrote so much homeschool curriculum.
Pensacola did. Like Pensacola was a Becca, I think.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Pensacola was a Becca.
I didn't put those together.
Yeah. That's who wrote that. And everybody in the 90s who was homeschooled knows what a Becca is for sure.
Yeah, I definitely had some of Becca. I had some Bob Jones stuff. So
that Bob Jones / Pensacola school I went to would be like the epitome of all of the criticisms that you could have of evangelicalism, like wrapped into a number of years. And I say that as nice as I can, but that was the school where literally every single person that I know that I was friends with that went to that school is like not non-Christian but like anti-Christian.
Oh, really?
Like it's insane.
It's to the point, dude. I think it's funny when you see people turn out that way. First of all, I would love to dive into why, like, how that happens so consistently. Right. When what you're doing is turning people against it in their adulthood at like a 90% rate. Like, oh my gosh, we need to talk about that. But I think what's funny is the people who become anti-Christian think this. Not to piss anyone off who might fall into this category, but I always find it that they have this feeling that they've ascended to higher truth, and all they've really done is just been like they're still almost controlled by it in some way because of how bothered by it they are, how much it still controls them in some way or another. Oh, sure. They haven't moved on. Like, yeah, if they like I use my brother as an example because I have no idea really what he thinks. He wouldn't say he's Christian, but
this is your younger or older brother? Older brother, yeah.
Okay. He's just one of those people that was just like moved on in like late high school, early college. He stayed in the area, just stopped going, and then was just like, this isn't like. And then that was it. He never said a bad word about it. Never came after anyone. He just drifted away. So I think that's to me the idea of someone who like was over it but wasn't hurt. Like, but when you see the militant people like the Reddit atheists who are like they're raging, like you're like, all right, you're not really any different. That's just you picked a different flavor of fundamentalism. It's like really,
that's exactly. I went to Barnes and Noble and I put the Bibles in the fiction section.
Yeah. Dude, I love coming across some on Reddit. Oh my gosh, dude. That's so much fun. But yeah, so after I attended that school, then I went back to the school that I attended from kindergarten through 4th grade. Because literally like it sounds weird, but when you go to a really small school, this is just kind of how it works. Like the people that you made friends with for like kindergarten through 4th grade, like you still are like you still know those people when you go to a really small school. It's not like public school where you you go to kindergarten and then every year, I never been to a couple public schools, so I don't know, but I'm assuming it cycles out. So like you're not with the same people year after year.
I mean, depending on how schools are regionalized and stuff, like there's like, there are people you go to kindergarten with that you don't go to elementary school with, and then elementary school you don't go to high school with. Mm-hmm. Whatever. Yeah. Right. And then also if you go from like, if you're like a year or two, like different from people, like you'll have K through 12th in a Christian, like a private Christian school, but you might lose like you might be going to 9th grade and you're good friends going into 7th and you're like, I guess like I won't see you for 2 years and we're not friends anymore. Like there's so it's,
you speak in my language.
Yeah. It's funny. I was homeschooled. Not that I haven't said this before, but just whatever, I'll make it quick. It's like, there were homeschool families that my family was like close to. So I'm actually still friends with the people that mostly one family, but I've known them. My parents were friends before they had kids, and then they had kids and they homeschooled, and then we just came up together, and they're still, some of them are still people I'm in contact with, which is pretty weird. It's like I've known them as long as anyone in my family.
Now, are they have they followed or are most of them now? When you were homeschooled, I'm assuming that was like Christian homeschooling. I think homeschooling for the most part in the 90s was like almost all Christians. I think it's actually branching out now. I think a lot of even like non-Christians are starting to homeschool a little bit now.
Yeah, there's a lot of programs that you can like sign up to just homeschool. There's a lot. Yeah, it is. I guess in California, it's become a lot bigger because they just don't. I don't know. People who have had problems with the school system.
Everybody's homeschooled now.
I mean,
The homeschoolers are getting ahead right now. I mean, they're way ahead than everybody else.
And I knew like there were certain homeschoolers, and they were like really excelled and were smart, and that was cool. Like those people were like, I mean, a lot of them were weird. So homeschoolers were often strange, but there were some who were like next level dumb. Like you would be in like I almost think they were homeschooled because their parents knew they had no chance of success in a public school, and they were like, what?
See, I think my school catered to those. We have a place for you.
And you were top of your class, Casey, and you thought you were on top of the world.
I was second in my class.
Sorry.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Not exactly like the honor squad.
Everyone was on the honor roll there. You could only have 10 kids on the honor roll.
Well, it's actually funny because is that actually a law? You can only have 10 kids on their own.
No, because Casey only had 8 kids in his class, so
it's funny. It's actually funny. I was actually this will come to the surprise of no one who has known me for a while. I was definitely like not a good student, and I was a class clown. Definitely was the class clown.
Yeah.
Growing up, 100%. 100%. Like I did okay in school. Like it's funny. I always did really well in the maths and the physics, but then when it came to history, English, anything like liberal artsy like that. I don't even know if that's the correct terminology for it, but like I was always really good at the sciences. I absolutely love science. I could actually stay engaged.
It's weird because you don't even believe in it, right? No.
Yeah, 100%, dude. Yeah, I reject it all now. I've only believed in Christian mathematics. So.
Everything comes out to 7.
Yep. Yeah.
Or 40.
Or 40. Yep. That's funny.
So I don't want to jump ahead in the story, but at which point did you become a drug addict?
So I was never, contrary to popular internet myths spread by a world famous guitarist, I was never a drug addict. Actually, that's a good transition into college. So, because that's kind of where like college starts for me. So, I don't know how you were in Casey in your school, but it's like my school. I was not a shy person, but I definitely was like a little bit awkward. Maybe everyone was, I don't know. But like when I went to college, it was like so big. Like I literally went from a school where I literally knew everyone from like 4th grade to graduating by name to Liberty. It was like so big. It was like a culture shock to me.
Oh, sure.
And so I had a really tough time. It's funny. I went to school and I knew a whole bunch of people going to Liberty, like Matt Hartman. I think both of you guys know him. Sam, you might not.
Yeah. I remember that kid.
Yeah, so he went to my high school. He was actually what we call a lifer. He went K to 12 to the same Christian school, so nice. He was a lifer for sure. So I knew him. I knew a couple other people that went to Liberty, but I specifically said, like when I went to Liberty, I want to get a roommate that I've never met. I want to stay in a dorm where I don't know anybody. I just like that. I literally like made that like my goal. I just wanted to go and like completely have a completely different experience and just really get outside of my bubble.
Did you choose to go to Liberty because you just so many people were and you were familiar with it, and it seemed like a good pick?
So like I said, I wasn't a bad student. I was like a B's and high B's, low A's in the math and sciences, and then like B's and C's in history and English. So averaged out, I was like a B student. Okay. So it's not like I had like this crazy choice of schools that I could go to. Yeah. So I could go to community college, which I did not want to go to because I wanted to leave. I wanted to get out of the town that I grew up in. Yeah. And then my parents like basically said like, you can go to any school you want, but if you go to a public college, we're not going to pay for any of it. if you go to a Christian college,
Oh,
we'll pay for half of it, which honestly, like, I think that's fair. Like they wanted me to go to Christian school and they said, we'll pay for half of it. It was actually, they paid for more than half of it. Some people might be like, that's messed up, but it was their choice. So they said,
I mean, my parents didn't offer any money for me for college, so
and you still chose Liberty out of love. Very good.
No, I chose Liberty out of my parents. When I was like I'm like, I'm gonna get a Bible degree, and they're like, you sure? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of other stuff out there.
Yeah.
Like, so I mean,
is that what you finished with? Did you switch majors?
No, I did not. I finished with a Bible degree, so
very good.
It's working out super well for me right now.
Very good, very good. Helped in logistics, right?
Yeah.
So when I went to Liberty, I didn't know anybody, and I promise the story is going somewhere. I didn't know anybody. I had a really hard time meeting people outside of like, unless I knew Dan Kelly and like he would introduce me to people, and I had a really hard time just like making friends without a connection. So I ended up getting really close with the guys that I ended up rooming in, and Casey, I'm not even going to talk about the John Gaynor story. That's a whole episode there with that dude.
Yes, I forgot about that.
Oh, should I devote a minute to it?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, actually, you know what? This is too good to skip. So, like I said, I showed up. I specifically said I didn't want to room with anyone. And I don't know if you guys remember this, but when you originally filled out the application to live on campus at Liberty, it asked you like questions like, how clean are you? What kind of, do you remember those questions?
I don't. That's so funny.
Literally, that was like one of the questions. It was like I think it was like a roommate finder, and you like filled out questions and it tried to like pair you up with someone.
The only question I remember is how frequently you jerk off and
daily.
You do it with your roommates around. Things like that.
Do it with your roommates around. So I just remember that question, and I'm not a filthy person, but I'm a cluttered person. I throw stuff, I leave clothes around the house, stuff like that. And so I just put like the middle rating. It was just like not messy, not clean. And I was like, okay, that's fair. Biggest mistake of my first year in school, dude. So I kid you not, dude.
That's only 1 point removed from dirty. Perfect.
Well, I didn't want to get stuck with a clean freak. That's why I didn't want to get stuck with someone that was. Yeah, I didn't want to get stuck with a clean freak, and I didn't want to get stuck with someone that was like, my mom was a clean freak, and so like I never really knew what living with someone that was disgusting was like, until I finished the story. Then you'll find out that I did.
What about room checks, dude?
Well, yeah, we'll talk about that. So that was a serious problem here. But so anyway, so my mom and my dad showed up on the Circle dorms, those disgusting trailer dorms that have been since removed from Liberty.
Yeah.
We showed up, and I'm like the first one in the entire dormitory. There's this one other guy, like the super fat, super tall dude, like walking around the dorm.
We don't fat shame people in this podcast.
What? Oh, we don't? Thin challenged. Okay. Thin challenged. And so I walked in. First thing my dad says, he's like, that dude could be your roommate. And we just like we all kind of chuckled. It was him. That was literally the guy. And to this day, my dad jokes about how like we walked in the first dude that you walk behind, you can just like smell him, and that was him. As far as so I moved in with him. The dude, there's so many issues. I'll tell you one funny story. I bought around Halloween. I went out. I had no money in college. I went out and bought like a whole bunch of candy because there was like we were doing something for Halloween with a sister dorm. I don't remember what it was. And I had a mini fridge, and I filled my freezer with the candy, like literally like 5 pounds of candy probably. Woke up the next day and it was gone, and the wrappers were like all over the floor. What? And I'm like, I kid you not, Casey, you know this story. And I'm literally like, John, I'm like, did you eat my candy? And he's like, no. And I'm like, I knew it was him. And so like later in the day, I'm like, going through his dressers, and the wrappers like all through his dressers. And I'm like, dude, you ate my candy. And I'm like, seriously, dude? So I went to the RA and ratted him out. And I'm like, because it wasn't the first time he ate my food all the time. Like it was like it was so bad. It was like a joke. Like I'd come in and all my groceries would be gone.
I can totally see you reacting to that too.
Oh, dude,
where's my freaking candy?
It was a freaking candy at the dent in the front of the mini fridge. So I go to the RA. And I ratted him out. And I'm like, dude, this guy, like, I gotta move. Like, he eats all my food. Like, this is disgusting. And
he's like a cartoon character.
They call what's that?
He's like a cartoon character. Like,
well, get this. I kid you not that this is a true story. They called him into the RA and we all sat down. And he like kind of like started getting emotional. And he's like, I struggle with sleep eating. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, dude. And like I showed no emotion. I was just like, I need to get a new roommate. One other story with this guy. Okay, every night, his parents would send him $250 in snack money a month. Just snack money. That's not including his meal plan. Every night at like 10 o'clock, he would get a Papa John's small pizza every night, and he would eat it before bed.
God.
One night, he left the garlic pack in his bed because he always had like food in his bed.
Like garlic sauce,
he rolled over on the garlic sauce, and for like a week, it just like saturated his mattress.
No.
And for a week, every time I walked into the room, it just smelled like a garlic pretzel, and I was like, this is too much. And so finally, we failed every room check because I kid you not, I actually took a picture because I would take like a shovel and shovel down the middle of the room. And so my room was like spotless. And then there was literally like a line of trash. I kid you not, I literally used to take pictures of it because it was so funny. And eventually it got so bad. We failed every room check and the RAs just, they were like, we're not going to give you reps anymore because it's not fair. And so finally, the room right next to me, it was these two guys from South Florida. They were both Cuban. Well, one was Honduran and one was Cuban. And they also had a really disgusting roommate. Like, dude, this guy always smelled like feces. I kid you not. Like, absolutely disgusting. In fact, I sat down next to him one time on a dude's couch to play Mario Party. When he stood up, he left a ring on the couch.
No.
Like a ring on the couch. And so we literally like just took the couch out to the dumpster and threw it away. Anyway, long story short, we literally quarantined those two guys in their own room with a room between them at the end of the hall on both sides. So basically, like they were all the way at the end of the circle dorm with a room between them and no room across from them for the rest of the year. Like they were completely isolated there.
Everyone just unanimously agreed that they were exiled.
It was so bad. It got to the point. I'm not even kidding. It got to the point where it became a weekly event where the RAs would like make them go shower because they never showered. And so it was like it became a joke, and they even like laughed about it. Like we'd all like go outside and like chant and bang on the door as they'd walk down to the shower for their weekly shower. Dude, it sounds unbelievable, but I kid you not, I've told a million people that story. It all checks out.
And then you felt really bad when one of them killed themselves because of it?
No, well, I don't. No, I don't know.
Dude,
one of the guys had serious emotional issues.
Everyone has like shocking roommate stories, and when I tell those, I'm talking about you.
Dude, it was bad.
The
guy who had like 3 boa constrictors in his bedroom. What is that?
Oh, snakes was the least of our problems. He tried to breed rats in our closet
with Joe's rat. Oh, okay. Now we have to talk about this period of our life. That was a terrible period. So okay. Well, here's the next mode. So that was my freshman year. This story I just told you. The sophomore year, I lived on East Campus. My roommate was insane. He all he did was play Call of Duty. Never went to class. He was in.
I remember that kid.
He was in ROTC, and I literally asked him, I never talked to him. I didn't even really know him, and I just remember asking him, like, "What are you going to do when you get out of college?" And he's like, "I'm going to be a ranger in the army." And I'm like, "Oh, that's okay. That's random." And he's like, "Yeah, because I would have no problem taking another person's life."
Cool. Yeah, you're just like, all
right. I told you that story before, right, Casey?
Yeah. I remember that kid.
Yeah,
I only ever saw the back of his head, but I remember him.
Wait a second.
Like the top back of his head.
Most people look the same from above.
Yeah, that's right.
Those ROTC guys, they all had the same haircuts.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So then Casey and I, my junior year, that was my junior or senior year. That was my senior year. I moved out with another filthy roommate, which we won't name. I don't think he'll ever listen to this, but we won't name him. I don't want to name. I don't want to filth shame. But
Most expensive jeans you've ever seen.
yeah, that's no. This is when we lived at the Vistas. That filthy guy.
Oh,
Yeah, not
okay.
the other guy. The other guys were clean, weren't too dirty.
Was the Vista's the place that I would?
Yes.
Was that
you
the place
there.
that like Joe lived with you at, and like I would hang out there?
Yeah, that's the place you got raided. Yep.
The running joke was that his hair was so dirty you could snap it off like a Lego man.
Yeah, that was what I said. I used to say that his hair was like a Lego hair because it was just like one slick mess. It's disgusting. But yeah, so that period of our life was actually really fun, to be completely honest.
It was.
So the story of that was I moved in with Tim, and then there was another guy that was moving in named Joey. About a month prior to moving in, Joey called me up on the phone and kind of threw a little bit of a bombshell to this Christian school raised kid. He's like, "Hey, I just want to let you know, we're moving in a month. I'm gay. Is that okay?" And I'm like, well, I mean, we signed the lease, so I guess like it was already. I mean, whatever. I like, yeah, no, I was just like, okay, that whatever.
I mean, you were probably more homophobic at the time.
Well, no, it's just, dude, back then, like, no, like. It was just like nobody talked about it. So I didn't even really know what to say.
Do you remember? And I keep asking people because I don't. I just remember the name was ridiculous. What was the name of Liberty University's like gay conversion group?
Yeah, Casey asked me that a little bit ago.
No, I probably asked him to ask.
You probably, yeah. He's like, let me think. Ask me, and then takes credit for it. I remember people talking about that, but yeah,
it was so funny. It was like. It was for everyone, like in the words of Liberty, struggling with homosexual feelings.
Yep.
And they would be like, it was like real secret, like and they were like word of mouth mostly. And then it's like, all right, so we're all gonna we'll all meet here and we'll talk about those feelings. And like the naivety of Liberty was so funny because it's like a good portion of those kids used it to meet other gay kids. Like,
I remember hearing that.
No kidding. Like, and Liberty's just they're like really taking it so seriously that they're like doing the Lord's work, and like 50% of them are just like met my life partner at.
I think
it was like Lynchburg Tinder.
No, I was gonna say it was like pre-Grinder days.
Yeah,
you know?
I know. There's a kid who became a journalist who went to that.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I can't remember what his name is, but I read a lot of what he writes. He's written a lot about Liberty and Jerry Falwell and things like that.
Didn't he write a positive article about how like his experience at Liberty wasn't really bad, or was that another guy?
I do not.
This guy in our dorm?
There was one guy that did like an undercover study back when Senior was still alive. Oh, so Sam, I don't think you would have even been there. I think that was 2007.
No, that was my I went after because I did a year of community college after I graduated, and then I came there. Like my first year there was the first year that Jerry Jr. had taken over.
Right. Yeah, there was a guy from like the New York Times that went undercover for a year at Liberty.
That was the guy who wrote the book Unlikely Disciple, right?
Yeah, but didn't he? Yeah, but he like basically was like he didn't sing their praises, but he was basically like it really wasn't that bad.
Yeah, he was like, I mean, like, I don't really, he wasn't like, it didn't believe in any of that, but he was like,
but everyone was nice, you know.
I mean, dude, that's my experience too. Like, I had a good time there. Like, I find a lot of administrative problems there for sure.
Yeah, now.
Yeah. And I did then. Like, dude, when I worked there, I was like, this place is a disaster. Like, the people who were in charge there, like, were like, I would have put money down that some of them were absolute
to watch from the sidelines rather than get involved.
But so, I mean, just working there, I mean, like, I remember like all the stories of people who had to deal with like Ron Godwin, and it was just like, that guy was a dickhead.
Yeah, I heard he was a terrible person.
Like, so many people who were at the top of that were just not good. I mean, Lee Beaumont was another guy that I had like, that everyone that I had knew from experience who had personal experience with him was just like, yo, this guy will have no problem ruining your life if you make him mad. And it's just like, that was the majority of like the higher up leadership there was just not.
I don't think that can be avoided in any culture where you're talking about like billions of dollars or like $1 billion an endowment or like just huge sums of money, huge sums of political influence. Like I do not think that
the gospel is good enough to prevent people from acting like that.
Well, I think, well, of course I set me up, bruh. No, I just think that I mean, from the Christian worldview, I mean, the church, historically, the church has thrived not when it was, you know, at the top of the power game. It's historically thrived when it was persecuted, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that you know, I think any religion when it gets in you know, in that type of power, when you have like literally billions of dollars involved, you know, tons of political influence. I mean, you literally had the president of the free world essentially endorse Liberty University, you know, over the last 4 years. I mean, that, you know, that type of power, I mean, you get one or two bad apples high up in there and, you know, the whole house of cards just collapses.
Yeah, I actually don't disagree. I don't think I'd take issue with anything you just said. I think power in that I don't think power in religion. I don't think that's when religion is functioning and it's the way it's intended to.
No, I completely agree. And in fact, you know, I think we would actually agree a lot on a lot of those issues. Maybe not doctrinally. We probably have some difference. In fact, I know we do as far as the last time we chatted. But you know, as far as what happened to Liberty, I mean, I know a couple people that like defend Liberty, but they defend it kind of as an entity instead of like what it actually accomplished, which I guess I'm actually kind of in that boat. Like, again, like I had a good experience at Liberty. I worked there for like 10 months and I could not take it. The politics there were just horrendous.
Yeah.
And I have a pretty
you talking workplace, like politics,
workplace. It was terrible. I mean, it was,
dude. I mean,
so lopsided and unfair.
Yeah. It was like, you knew who was you knew who was getting promoted. Like there's just so much that was like, you knew where to put an effort and where not to based on who was like the favorite. It was bad. When I worked there for years and it was like,
where did you work again? What department?
Worked in the fulfillment.
Okay.
And it was so, we had it better than most departments because we weren't even on campus. We were like in downtown Lynchburg in that like warehouse that they owned. And I mean, it was in all like honesty, it was a good place to work because it was the least liberty like, and I don't mean that in any way other than like, because at that point in my life, I definitely would have considered myself a very strong evangelical Christian, and I just like, even then I was like being disillusioned to the way that the school operated, and the people that I worked with were similar to me, but you could be more yourself, like there. Like, you didn't have to put on like this, like you didn't have to put on a smile and put on a show because there were people watching you. Like being off to the side there, like I mean, the majority of my life at work was like we sat around this 40-foot table and we just stuffed envelopes and shot the shit with our friends, and it was like the best job I've ever had. I would kill to have a job like that again, where you just mindlessly put envelopes in and letters in an envelope and just goof off with your friends.
Right.
So being that you are still in the area and you know a ton of like Liberty affiliated people, what is the general consensus about Falwell Jr.?
I don't know anyone that likes Falwell Jr. outside of the recognition. You know, you and I talked about this, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago, outside of the recognition that as far as growth, you know, before all this stuff came out about him, you know, about the affair, which I don't want to hound on him too bad.
Alleged.
Well, no, it's not alleged. I think what's alleged is what I don't. Who knows?
It's his level of participation.
That's exactly right.
If you just,
I don't know.
I mean, are you guilty if all you do is just like watch? You know?
Yeah. As far as locals have always hated Liberty, which is interesting because the economic impact that Liberty has had on Lynchburg is, I mean, it is Lynchburg for the most part. It's insane. They did a study like 10 years ago, and they said that like every 5 years there was like $1 billion of economic activity in Lynchburg. directly affiliated with liberty. But that aside, I don't know anyone locally who like looked at him as a as a faith leader like he was supposed to be viewed as.
Yeah.
Like they viewed his father as. And I know a lot of people didn't like Senior, but the one thing you could say about Senior is that he. I don't know of any scandals like this that Senior was caught up in. You can not like how ingrained he was in politics, but as far as like scandals, he didn't have anything like this.
Outside of nothing of the sexual nature. There was just that little brief moment where he wouldn't let black people go to Liberty.
Which is actually really interesting.
But is that really a scandal?
Actually, I actually was not aware that Falwell Senior. What year was that?
I don't.
It started out as like a charter school that was all white.
Right.
Yeah, there was.
Really?
There was.
I actually didn't know that.
He ended up giving scholarships to like as a form, almost like a form of like reparations to pretty much black kids in the neighborhood. It was just like you get your first year Liberty free for a certain year.
I'd be interested to know. So that was like he specifically didn't allow black students to go, or there was like some. And I'm not defending that.
I know you're not. I know.
I'm saying he specifically banned it, or there was like some.
He started. As far as the way I understand it is he started Liberty as a charter school, not a college, but like a charter high school, and it was all white.
All white because like by rule. That was the policy. Okay. Now I know that I know Bob Jones. In fact, you can find the article still on their webpage today. In the year 2000, finally allowed interracial marriage. In the year 2000, which is insane. Which is literally there's an article on their.
I just don't see how God can bless this country anymore.
I know.
Look, to be clear, one of the traps I don't want to fall into here. While I made the joke about that not being a scandal, obviously it was. I do want to be clear that I don't think he did change. And I think I don't want to I hate the culture that we have that just like digs up shit from people's past and tries to ruin their lives because of it, simply because they don't support or believe in the same types of things that you do. It really is frustrating to me. So I'm not trying. Yeah. I was just trying to make a joke. I don't actually like.
That's fair. Well,
I think he seemed like a really sweet old guy.
he was a nice guy.
Like you should be praised for changing. As opposed to like just being demonized.
If he had a policy at the school that was literally like no blacks were allowed, then I have no problem condemning that.
Of course.
If the issue is that in the racist culture, because I mean back in the 60s and 70s in Lynchburg, Virginia, I mean I think you basically still had segregation up until the early 70s in Lynchburg. If he started the school in segregated America and it just so happened, if there wasn't an official policy barring black kids, the fact that no black people went to the charter school was just a repercussion of the segregated city. Then I don't know if I put all. What I'm saying is I don't like isolating an incident from the time in which it took place and just assuming that he literally had a policy that said no black people allowed. Maybe he did. If he did, that's sick. And I'll be completely honest. It's hard for me to imagine. It's really hard for me just to imagine that ever being like something that was so rampant in the Christian religion, specifically in the South. It's like, I don't know, there's still racism today, but as far as like segregation, I feel like we're so far removed from that ideology.
That I don't think I don't know where you're going with that. We're so far removed from it.
We're so far removed from living in a culture that openly says if you're black, you can't attend the school with all the white kids.
Yeah, we are very far removed from
like
that.
It's.
Right. I mean, at least we're at least a lifetime, like our lifetime removed from that.
Well, yeah, for sure.
That's something like I gleaned that information from like looking at one article about it. So
Well,
I really
that may
can't
very
say
well
for
be
sure.
true.
No, I mean, my understanding of it is I'm not sitting here with a fact book in front of me, so anyone can fact check this afterwards. It doesn't even matter because we've already made our points about it. But that my understanding of it is that, and I learned this from being there, from people who liked the school, from people who liked Jerry Senior, that it was not related to segregation. It was just liberty. It was just okay to not accept black. Like you weren't going to be, you weren't going to get charged with anything or taken to court over not accepting black people to your school at that time. So that was my understanding. But I mean,
Interesting.
regardless, my only point was I just wanted to say that like the fact that he
That's
changed,
fine.
even if he just caved to pressure, like
Sure.
even like, but that's culture. It's like, you know, when we're fighting for change, it always starts with people caving to pressure. I think change in people's lives should be acknowledged. Like if you pulled up any of this, I mean, you could pull up a bunch of shit that I thought in high school. And if you were going to hold my feet to the flame on that, I wouldn't be eligible to do anything ever. Like
Right.
people would just be like, nope, you're canceled.
Yeah, it actually makes you pretty thankful. I don't know about you, but I'm very thankful that social media didn't exist in any
Yep.
major form from like being 15 to 20.
I know. You think of all
Right.
these like 12-year-olds who got TikToks just doing
Oh
the
my
weirdest
gosh,
shit.
dude.
You're like,
Holy
yo,
cow.
you are going to regret some of this.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So okay, so that being the case, where are you at today? Because obviously, you know, you were a militant Christian fighting atheists on YouTube and
Oh,
you
I
know
still am.
whatnot,
Oh, I still am for sure. Yeah, so it's funny.
having
So,
creationism arguments through
yeah.
comments.
Now I don't so creationism, I still am definitely a creationist. Not that for me that is like a minor point at this point. For some I don't know, for some reason when people first get into um there's kind of like a theme with everyone. When you first get into debating something, you tend to kind of like stick with the extremes and like really hammer on the extremes points of it. I
Sure.
noticed that. I noticed that all over the place. Even like with atheists, like when people first become like the militant atheist, they'll like really get on like some fringe belief of it and just like hammer that point home. And then over time, you kind of like mellow out a little bit, and you start to even out, I guess, a little bit. But it's interesting because growing up in high school and in college, like people probably looked at me and like I would have been like the least likely person to like all the people I knew that went to that one school where they're like all atheists now. Like, dude, I was like the rebel there, you know, because I was like the loud kid. You know, I would use like bad language in school. And today, you know, I'm pretty I'm sure there's still people that are Christian that attended that school, but like all the people that I knew personally are like anti-Christian now. So yeah, so where I'm at now, I'm definitely not as militant as I once was especially on certain issues. But you know, I still you know, I definitely have you know, you know, Sam mentioned at the beginning of the show, you know, there's like some people that like, you know, were like really militant in college and then like kind of mellowed out and now we're just like kind of in no man's land. And then there are the people that have always been like super devout. And then you have, you know, the category that I fit into where like, you know, I always called myself a Christian, but I never really cared to even like study it, you know, and now I've gotten to the point where like, that's a huge, you know, that's a really important part of my life. And you know, I just, yeah, it's just a really important part of my life, like that, my specific faith tradition.
Yeah. What, if, I don't know if this is like, it's going to get us in the weeds or too pry, but what is that? I'm actually more interested in what that means to you by it being an important part. Cause so I'm Christian still, despite the way that, I don't know, I guess despite the way some people might make assumptions at this point, but, and I would say that it is important to me, but I feel like maybe it's important to me in different ways than it's important to you, or maybe it's not. But because are the way that we might practice it, maybe not even the way that we practice it, but in the way that we think about it or the way that we internalize it. I'm curious as to what that means to you by it being important.
No. See, that would be me like 8 years ago. Not as much now. Now I do think that there are certain things And this is where we'll start to fight, hopefully. So, uh, I do think do think there are certain things split down political aisles that I would not think are compatible with the historic Christian faith. I'm sorry, Sam. What was the question you had for me? What does it mean
So
when I say
how is it important to you? Is it your involvement in church? Is it your prayer? Is it prayer? Is it like, what is it? Like, what is important when you say your faith is important to you? What does that actually mean in practice?
Right. So I would say that a lot of people, when they say faith is important to them, they'll talk about like all the time they devote to church, their small group, their volunteering. To be honest, I go to church. We go to church. I am not actually very involved in my church. We actually just switched churches during the pandemic for a few different reasons. But when I say like that's a big part of my life, I don't even mean like the going to church or like hanging out and going to my Bible studies and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I really try to make it something that touches. It sounds so corny, but I'm honest when I say it. It's something that I try. Like everything that I do, I try to measure it through the lens of what I think the Christian response would be. So, even when it comes to work, I just started a new job a month or so ago. And, it's a remote job. So I've never seen, and I probably will never see my coworkers, but, everything that I try to do, or every facet of my life, I try to work through that, specifically through that Christian worldview. And I can honestly say that, obviously not every waking hour of every waking day, but, throughout most of the day, again, that WWJD slogan that was super corny. I really do try to think of things in that perspective.
Sure.
All the way from how I view the political landscape, how I raise my kids, how I interact with people at work, how I interact with people at church, how I balance church and personal life. Like I think one of the issues that the Christian church has is that a lot of us growing up, we spent, all of our parents spent so much time in church. It's like almost all they did, and it almost became like more of a habit than it almost became more of like a crutch than than an actual way of life.
It was legitimately my entire social form, like way of being, up until I was like 16, between 16 and 17 years old.
And I think that's actually, I don't know if that's destructive. I know for me that would have been destructive, because I think a lot of my rebellion was just from the fact that like literally I had I was not exposed to anything outside of, of that, like the Christian worldview. And like when I started like encountering things, I was just like, oh, it's not really as bad as I thought it was.
I mean, dude, one of the things that I'll say that I had, one of the I'll mention probably from time to time forever, is like, I went to Liberty University, a Southern Baptist college, thinking like I'm going to go around. I spent my entire life growing up in this way. Now I'm going to go to college and be comfortable being around people who are just like me. And, a lot of what had an impact on me in my change and development was meeting Christians who were not like me, who had different understandings of faith, or placed different levels of importance on different things. And it expanded my mind a lot, and in a lot of ways. And that was I'm the irony of where I'm at is that all the things that I would have a problem with at this point in my life, it's through every one of those things that I got to the point that I'm at. So like on a generous day, I look at that and say, this is just the way it is. Like, I don't look at it through a negative lens. I of course it did result in certain difficulties, or I don't know. There's certain, raising my own kids, I'm not going to try to put them on that same trajectory simply so that they can learn the things that I learned through the ways that I learned it. Of course, that's not what anyone would do. But
do you believe in putting them on any trajectory?
Yes, I do. So I'm affiliated with the church, and I'm pretty heavily invested in it. What I'm not going to do is feel I won't really be too hurt if they don't find the same investment in it that I do, or they don't get out of it what I do. But it is something that we're kind of just making part of our lives and part of their upbringing and tradition. This is just something that we'll do. And I struggle a lot with trying to figure out how to talk to my kids about faith or God, or because when they're kids, you would talk to them about it in a more concrete way, like God as like a physical concept, whatever. I mean, you talk to them and you don't talk to kids in the abstract, and that's the only way that I understand it at this point is in the abstract. So like trying to figure out how to like just talk to my kids about it in a way that doesn't misrepresent it, but doesn't send them down, doesn't set them up on the same path that I was set up on. I have a hard time with that. And I know that mostly I think I'm wrong in the way that I'm resistant to talking to them about it at all because it's more of a fear-based reaction. And that's one of the problems I have with how I grew up, is that the majority of, in my experience, the majority of people's faith is, it's a very fear-based thing. I don't want to go to hell. I want God to love me. Like, it's all based out of wanting or getting something out of it. And it's drifted into something else for me. And I don't want my kids to find their way into some punitive type of, I would rather them have no faith at all than think that God's going to smite them for having sex before they're married. Even as much as I don't want to know about their sexual habits when they're teenagers, like that's going to make me feel weird. But I think
have you given much thought to like how you're going to address those issues with your daughter, Chad?
Like the sex issue?
No.
Like the faith.
I mean, you can go where. Yeah, like obviously when we grew up, it was in church every time the doors were open, and there was obvious some pressure to quote unquote get saved. Most of us did it at 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever. Like what do you see in that?
Yeah, so I actually think I think like the complaints that you guys have, like that pressure to quote unquote get saved, or accept Jesus, which my theology as a Calvinist doesn't really appreciate. Sam,
oh God, I'm cringing, dude. Oh no, I'm making a cringy meme about you now.
Oh well, yeah. So like that, like whole, yeah. So my parents were not like that at all. My dad grew up in like the most fundy atmosphere, King James only like lifestyle ever, and he like went off the deep end and then came back to the faith. And so I think that he was kind of in the transition period, Sam, where you might be at this point, like you experience that very much like that sales tactic Christianity, where it's just like it's almost like tricking people into believing in Jesus.
Soul winning.
Yeah, soul winning. Yeah. And so my parents were very they were very clear with me, like, look, this is what this is, both of you will cringe when I say this, but from their worldview, they said, this is what's true about Christianity. There's a lot of hypocrites with Christianity. Christianity is not about, we go to church because, we enjoy worshiping God. We don't go to church out of like necessity. If you want to go to if we want to go to the beach one weekend, we're not going to be chastised. My parents left a couple churches growing up because there were like a lot of hypocrites there, especially in that like independent fundamental Baptist movement. I mean, there's just the hypocrisy is amazing in some of those places. I mean, you have like these obese preachers on blood pressure medications that you sip on a glass of wine before you you're in danger of hellfire. It's insane.
I know.
That very, very much. My parents
They're
are
very
very
quick
much,
to skip over the passages about gluttony and get
yeah,
straight
that's
to
exactly right.
drunkenness.
That's exactly right. My parents were very, even though we attended a church that kind of leaned that way on more than one occasion, they were very careful to be like, we don't agree with that at all.
I think, dude, honestly, I think you growing up with parents who disagreed with the pastor but could still go there is actually a big deal.
Right? Oh, I
Because
think so
most
too.
families are like, well, this is what the pastor says. And like,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. If you go to a church that was less extreme than yours, and
Mhm.
even maybe more on even, I'll even say, if you go to a church that would say everything that I would want it to say, and then you just go, well, this is what the pastor said. Like, that is always a very dangerous perspective to have and to instill into your children. I think even going to a church like that and then having your parents tell you we don't think like that, and still be fine going there and being around people who do, that's a
Right.
big deal.
Right. And Casey, to answer your question, like as far as like how I want to raise my kids, one thing that I was not exposed to was like the historic nature of Christianity. And I haven't done a ton of traveling, but I've been to Europe a little bit. And like one thing I'm really going to stress with my kids is like the longevity of Christianity, like its historic nature. For me, that and I don't want to sound like that's the most important part of Christianity, because it's definitely not, and there's definitely a lot of error throughout the history of the Christian church.
Mhm.
But one thing I really want to stress on it with my kids is like really like basically what you said, Sam. I really want to stress that like we aren't Christian, and we don't just sit here and embrace what our pastor says, because our pastor might be wrong in some sense. I really want to bring Christianity, bring like the critical, Casey, I'm not sure exactly where you're standing, if you're agnostic or whatever, but I really want to bring the critical.
Casey's part of a sex cult now, so
sex cult now, the Epstein cult.
yeah,
I really want to
changed.
bring.
He changed a lot.
And look, the skeptics will cringe when I say this, but I really want to bring like the critical thinking aspect of Christianity to it, because I think a lot of people there was no like challenges to Christianity growing up. Like I was never challenged on like the validity of Christianity growing up. It was just always like, yeah, it's true. Like just accept it. And that was, probably 7 or 8 years ago. Like I kind of went through a period where I was like really questioning it. I was like, well, like how do you even know that not only how do I know that Christianity is true, like even if Christianity is true, how do I know that like my specific flavor of Christianity is true? Like how can you even know something like that? And I spent years like studying that. And for me, and everybody's a little bit different, but for me, being exposed to like that questioning and that critical thinking aspect of why do I believe it? Is there historic validity to what I'm believing? For me, that's something that I really want to stress on my kids. Like, I do not just want to like throw them into a church and say, John the Baptist was an independent fundamentalist Baptist who only read the King James Bible. I don't want them to. I don't want
John
to.
the Baptist, in all honesty, probably couldn't even read the Jewish Bible, but
Probably not.
Which is, I think, something that people probably don't think much about, and that
Right.
you don't need. Yeah. Anyway, I don't need to go off on that. Do you think that? So I guess ask it maybe one more question about it before we drag this out too long. Do you think that being that I'm trying to think of the best way to ask it, but that there's a right and wrong when it comes to Christianity, that there's and that there is that part of being Christian is being correct?
Yeah, to an extent. So in the Christian theology, you have something called adiaphora, which is the Greek term essentially for like essentials. So things that have historically been essential in the Christian faith would be things like accepting the resurrection, accepting the deity of Christ, accepting the whole gospel, death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. So I think that like those are the foundational principles. One of the areas that I've really shifted over the years, and again, it goes back to that idea that like when people first become militant in their beliefs, like whether or not it's atheist or Christian, they tend to like just assume everybody believes the fundamentals, and they like to really like nail on those like non-essential things, like, you know, is the earth 10,000 years old or 10 billion years old, you know,
or flat.
Or flat. Those stupid issues.
When
by the
we're
way,
talking about things that have just equal amounts of scientific credibility.
By the way, there is an atheist society of flat Earth, just FYI. So,
I know. So it shows you that insanity
Everybody's
can. It shows you the power of groupthink. It's essentially
bronies for Christ.
Yeah, I do. Now, yeah. So I do believe that there is a true Christian faith and a false Christian faith. I think that, and I'm not sure if that's exactly what you're asking, but I do not believe. If what you're asking is, do I believe in like the 20th century fundamentalist mindset where you have to, you have to hold to the 2001 Baptist faith and message in order to be considered a true Christian? No, I wouldn't take it to that extent. But I think that there are fundamentals, like you would have to believe in the resurrection. I even would go so far as to say I don't think you have to embrace the doctrine of the Trinity, but I don't think that you could deny any of its aspects, if that makes sense, because that's a complicated doctrine. So if someone says, "Oh, I don't believe in the Trinity, but I believe that Jesus is God," then, you know, obviously he's got like there's contradictions in that statement.
As long as you're getting 2 out of 3, you're in. Is what you're trying to say, right?
No, I think at the base level, you have to believe in the death, burial, resurrection of Jesus Christ. I think that's the very fundamental beliefs in the Christian faith. And then that's the very basis. I guess that would be like the overall definition of what is the central belief of Christendom. And then obviously as a Protestant, my views on justification, like whether
Don't
or not
bore people, Chad. Come on.
that's why I'm really trying not to do that. That's
and sanctification, justification, emancipation, proclamation. What?
I'm just
Dude,
saying.
I almost hung up when he said in the original Greek.
I'm just saying. Well, that's a very important distinction, like the concept of essentials and non-essentials. So no, I do not believe that you have to believe that the earth is 10,000 years old to be a true Christian. Yes, you need to believe in the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Yes, I think that you have to recognize.
What if you only believe in the resurrection and not the death?
Well, then a live person would be resurrecting himself, which would be absolutely irrelevant.
So knowing that this is a wormhole that could easily
don't do it, Casey. I'm
turn
scared.
into a long conversation.
I'm good, by the way. Like I'm sure that you have a cutoff point before your listeners just turn off the podcast, but
we don't have any listeners yet. So
we don't have any listeners, so it's good.
This is for us.
So,
plus, Casey, you can edit out the gospel, Casey. That's fine.
Dude, we're gonna we're gonna make you sound like an absolute asshole. Editing is amazing. This is gonna be a hard edit.
Yeah, he's gonna take like the first 30 minutes of me and narrow it down into I hate gay.
Yeah. Well, we weren't, because I don't think you said gay until you just did that.
And you made the edit way easier.
Yeah, thanks.
So, given that, all right, we all know each other through Liberty. Right. We talked about Jerry Falwell, who was obviously like a major evangelical political leader in his time. The church has become pretty intertwined in, a distinct political stance over the past, over our lifetime. Do you think that that's wise? Do you think that it's prudent? Do you think that the church has a responsibility to advocate for policies on a political level? Or do you think that it's a misdirection, that they've put their eggs in the wrong basket?
Yes and no, and let me explain that. So
you can't explain that. That's the end. Yes and no's your answer.
Yes,
all right.
So yes, in the sense. So as far as my theology holds, is I hold to a view called postmillennialism. Sam, I'm sure you know what that is, or
I do.
Sure you've heard of it. And so basically, I do believe that Christians should seek to what's a way that doesn't sound so intrusive, but I think that Christians should participate in all aspects of life, whether that be, within their church, within their local government, within their federal government. As far as what you said, as how over the last, over our lifetime, it's been really become ingrained in politics and culture. That's literally been happening for the last 2,000 years. I mean, you had Christianity merge with the Roman Empire with Constantine. You had all the way up until in the Protestant Reformation, where you had the Church of England. It was a sacralism or a theocracy, essentially, where you had the Old Testament law in Geneva, Switzerland, was what they used for their justice. They literally followed the Mosaic principle, and if someone committed adultery, they'd kill them. Like all throughout history, you have Christianity and specifically Christianity tying itself in with politics. So, do I think it's wise? I think that all Christians, if you really believe in the Christian message, and I think everyone would actually agree. If you firmly believe in the Christian message, you want that message to spread. You don't want it to spread by the sword. I don't want to go into a native tribe and hold a knife to the neck of natives and say, repent or die. I'm not looking to do that. But yeah, I would want people that I elect to legislate from that worldview, because from my perspective, I think that from my perspective, there is a moral law, there is a natural law, and I think that the world works better when people follow that specific law. Namely, you shouldn't murder. You shouldn't cheat on your wife. I don't necessarily believe that you should be killed if you cheat on your wife.
Jerry Jr. didn't cheat on his wife. We already went over this.
Yeah, I know.
It's not cheating when you're okay with it.
So when I say yes or no, yes, I think that in the time, Christians should want to promote through legal means what they believe. But I also recognize that whenever you have, this goes back to the beginning of the conversation. Whenever you have the mix of power and religion, you get one or two bad apples in there, and you've made a mess of it.
So, but the rest of the saying is spoils the whole bunch.
Sure.
So that being the risk, does the risk outweigh the reward, I guess?
Well, that's why I said yes and no.
Okay, actually, so what I want to ask, a better way of asking that is legislating your version of morality on other people because you believe that that's what's best. Is that I guess this would require an understanding of what you mean when you say the gospel message. It would require that you think that
two things. So I don't believe you can legislate the gospel message. Obviously, I think that is a supernatural work of God. When you say, do I believe that I should legislate my view of morality? Every single person in this virtual room thinks that you should legislate your version of morality to a certain extent. And so, yeah, I definitely think that
that's a good. You're right. You're right.
Because we all think pedophiles are sick, and so we all would want to ban pedophilia. That's putting our morality on top of, that's legislating through our moral compass.
Of course.
But the only difference is that all of us would believe that there is a, all of us would disagree. Well, not Sam. You and I probably would. Well, actually, I don't even know if we'd all disagree. I don't know 100% where Casey is at this point, but I think all of us would recognize probably that there is at least some sort of a natural law that everybody recognizes is bad. I don't know anyone in the world, even serial killers, recognize that serial killing is wrong. I mean, you listen to some of these interviews with people like Dahmer, like he's like, yeah, I knew that it was twisted. I still did it, but I knew it was bad, and I fully recognize that I need to be punished for it. I think what you're asking is,
if you're a serial killer. So are you?
Yes. Well, actually, that's actually a good. Yeah. Yes, I am a serial killer.
You heard it here first.
Eat lots of.
It's more about I guess it's more about conflating, maybe it's more on the other side of the equation. Maybe it's conflating like conservative political values with religious beliefs.
That's another problem, because conservative is a misnomer. That's a completely subjective statement. What's conservative in America is not what's conservative in Australia.
Right.
Sure.
But
we're
I mean, you know what I mean, though.
Like
Like
speaking America, I guess.
Well. There is a relation, because basically, conservative basically means to conserve. You're preserving traditional values, whatever the traditional values in your culture are. That's what the Conservative Party leans toward. Most first world countries in the world were founded. You can reject whether or not their version of Christianity that they were founded on was accurate, but I mean, essentially every first world country in existence today was founded on some sort of Christian principle, which is why throughout the world we associate Christianity with conservative values. Now, in America, conservative value also mixes with traditionalism, so that's why Christians in America like their guns, like their low taxes. But in Australia, Christians in Australia think we're absolutely insane because we like our guns. They think that
I think that's
weird.
That's what I'm asking.
Sure.
Is like American conservative ideals,
Yeah.
gun ownership, free market capitalism.
Right.
Like, I guess it's not so much a right or wrong question. It's like, has this been productive for the church?
No.
So closely associate them. Thank you. I just remembered how much of an idiot I feel when I try to talk about this stuff with you.
Dude, I thought you came back to that real good, man. I think it got you to the point, because what you're asking is what everyone's it comes down to what the intent of at least that version, or I don't want to say version, because that sounds I'm like I don't know.
I get what you're saying,
not taking it seriously, but your understanding of Christian faith, it all comes down to what your understanding of the Christian faith is. Is it something that are you tying certain political ideals to what you think, to your version of utopia, and trying to build that and saying that this is what I want is what God wants, or what we want is what God wants, therefore we're going to build it, and God loves capitalism and God loves weapons, like whatever it is.
I do not hold to that. Yeah, that is a big mistake. A lot of people, just instantly lump everything that tends to be a conservative viewpoint in America. And by the way, they do this everywhere, not just in America, but in America, we live in America, so that's central to us.
Yeah, that's all we can really speak to.
That's right. So no, that is a huge mistake. And whenever half of my family's from Canada, and my uncle is like anti-American conservative, but very much Canadian conservative. He hates the idea of the Second Amendment. He hates the idea of the First Amendment. Which might sound weird to you guys, but actually, if you ever talk to someone like from Europe and you talk about the American idea of the First Amendment, how we should be able to have freedom to say offensive things, they think that's insane. The world thinks that's absolutely insane. I think
because it muddies the water between like hate speech and what does hate speech result in? I mean, you can see the way that it results in people making violent, violent moves against the people. Yeah. I mean,
I was talking to this German girl about it, and she came back and she said, "Yeah, you Americans have a really liberal view of freedom of speech."
Yeah.
And I was like, "That's interesting." It's just interesting how that's completely opposite around the world. But yeah, to go back to your question, Casey, yeah, I think whenever I have this discussion with my uncle, because we get really heated. In fact, I actually had to unfriend.
I remember him from Facebook.
I had to get rid of him on Facebook because he. It just gave me heartburn, and I like discussion, but it's just he's like me except 60, 67. But no, my distinction whenever I have that discussion with someone, I am very careful with the distinction that there are two types of political views: moral views and amoral views. The Second Amendment is amoral; it's not right or wrong, whatever side you take, as long as you're not taking it like to be destructive to society or something like that. But the First Amendment is an amoral issue. If you don't believe in the American First Amendment, you're not a pagan. If you don't believe in the Second Amendment, you're not a pagan. You have to really make the distinction of those views. And I do think it's unfortunate that that there is that massive lump. Like it's literally to the point, like back in my never Trump days, I mean, I would like literally talk to some of my conservative uncles that do live in the States, and I'd be like, yeah, I'm not a fan of Trump. And they would literally like be concerned for my soul. They're like, and I'm like, and so I think that is a huge issue. But I really think that comes back to like a cultural issue though, because there are a lot of Christian principles that are tied to the conservative movement, just because conservatism is a traditionalist movement, and in Western civilization, traditionalism is Christianity. I mean, essentially, in a very loose term.
Yeah. It's pretty married to it at this point.
Sure. But that connection is breaking. There's a lot of Christians who are abandoning, and I'm not for it or against it. There's certain financial fiscal policies that I really like, but there's a lot of evangelical leaders that are, abandoning what would historically be called, actually not even historically called Republican, because the Republican Party has shifted completely over the 80 years.
I mean, that's like the Republican Party was the abolitionist party back. We've seen the 180. Like,
right. Well, no, that's not what I mean. I still think that I still think that aspect of the Republican Party still exists. I'm mainly talking about 12 years ago. I mean, the Republican Party was the party of corporatism and wars, endless wars. Now all the Republicans are talking about getting all of our troops out of the Middle East. When did that happen?
Well,
yeah, I know.
All not Mitch McConnell. That old turtle's really upset about it.
Well, I mean, Trump just signed an executive order to pull all the troops out of Afghanistan before Christmas.
He's not turtly enough.
Only 2,500 before Christmas.
No, that's 2,500 out of Germany. He's signed an executive order to pull them all out of Afghanistan by Christmas.
Yeah, it's one of the very, very, very few things he's done where I'm like, I'm a liberal person, but I love it. It's like funny for me when I'll fight my that part of you that just, because I hate that motherfucker, but but I'll fight every part of me that's like, if he's going to do something, and my natural inclination is to be like, nope, he's wrong. Like I do fight that at all. I always do. I think it's important to try to fight that. So when I saw that, my first thought was, what's the ulterior motive here? He's trying to, and I try to get, and I'm like, no, let's just take this for what it is. This is, I've felt like this needed to happen for a long time. It's right. He signed it. I don't care about maybe there's an ulterior motive. Maybe there isn't. I'm just going to sit with it and be like, I'll just take this. This is fine. Like,
now, I do disagree with the idea of taking our eyes off the Germans, because they are historically pesky.
That's racist, bro. That's racist.
No one's going to care, though. The Germans, they're whiter than
Bavarian lives matter, bro. Bavarian lives matter. So. Casey, you've been very submissive this entire hour and 20 minutes.
Submissive.
That's a good word for him.
So, Casey, tell me where you're at, because I actually don't know that much where you're at. I have my ideas, but sex cult, Satanism, what?
Yeah. Well, low key sex cult. I'm an apathetic agnostic.
Apathetic agnostic. What is that?
That means
he found that group on Reddit and was just like, "This sounds like me."
It means like, I don't know, but I don't care enough to really investigate it. Like I which is funny doing a podcast about all this stuff. It's not that I don't care at all about religious views or anything. It's just that from a personal standpoint, like me investigating what I believe about those issues and stuff. I feel like I don't have the energy for it.
What was your biggest dissuading reason? Because it's interesting, because you were probably like the best person in like the most straight-laced dude. 100%.
Next to Sam.
Yeah, Sam was a good guy too. Was.
No. I don't know if it was like a particular issue. It was just I made friends that weren't Christians, and I
That's
got
what I
really
was always
close to
told not
them,
to
and
do as a homeschooler.
and that's for a reason. It actually does pan out exactly like they said. I think it was just I got really disillusioned with not so much Christian views, but Christian culture.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like church culture, and in the stereotypical way of like, my parents go to a church that has 5,000 members and they all show up on Sundays and they're like, good to see you, brother. Good to see you, brother. And then they go their separate ways. And I just got really disillusioned with all of it.
So let me run a question
trappings.
by you. Let me run a question by you. So
Okay.
would you say that you do not believe the historic claims of Christianity? I'm assuming.
No.
And why not?
Because Chad's going to show you why you need to in 3 simple minutes.
Step 1.
I just, I know more about whale stomachs now. And I don't think you can live in one.
Well, I'm not even. I'm not going to touch that one with the 10-foot pole.
Good. Don't take the bait, Chad.
Well, actually, that's interesting. Sam, what do you believe about that?
About whale stomachs, that they're real?
About the story of Noah. What do you think about that?
Of Noah
as a Christian
or Jonah?
Jonah.
Jeez,
sorry.
I thought you were a Christian. I'm sorry.
I'm one beer in.
I'm calling it right here. Oh God.
Because this would be interesting because
I like the story and I actually taught at my church on the story of Jonah. Well, kind of a little bit. It was more of like a historical run through of Jonah and his assumption of the Assyrian Empire. I think Jonah's a story. It's a story that is about progressing the understanding of how God views his enemies. Because we know historically the Assyrians never repented, and I think and Jonah's the one that's mad about it. So Jonah's a representation of Israel, and it's just it's a story, and I think a lot of the narrative that's thrown into it is for the intent of showing that it's a story. And I think when you take that compared to what you get in Kings and Chronicles of the actual backdrop of the historical. God, I have to spruce up on it. Point is,
fine. I don't know all the.
Don't worry about it. I have it all written down if you actually want to read what I actually had for it. But it's a story. That's all. It is a story. I'm not saying that to just demean it. I'm saying it's powerful and meaningful, and it should have an impact on your life if you're.
But you don't think it actually happened?
No, I don't think the author of it had any intent of anyone thinking it actually happened.
So when Jesus uses Jonah as
we're moving on.
This symbol.
This is not no. It's just using the common vernacular. It's just
so when Jesus uses Jonah as a sign, a type and shadow of his death and resurrection, do you think Jesus knew that it was just a story, or he believed it actually happened?
I don't know. I don't think
he didn't know, or he didn't. What?
I don't know what Jesus thought about it because I don't think it even matters.
So and that hits it because I'm sure my jokes feel evasive. This is exactly where everything kind of unraveled for me is because I was brought up, the environment, and it's not so much that my parents just beat it into us. It was the environment, the school, the church. It was all predicated on, God's word. The Bible is the inerrant word of God. It's divinely inspired. Every sentence of it is true in a literal fashion. And I think my faith in it was predicated on that idea. And when I started to, really admit that I had problems with some of those types of things, I think it was it pulled the bottom brick out from under me. Yeah. I just didn't. I think at the time when I was willing to still entertain, when I wanted it to be real,
sure,
I just couldn't put together a version of it where, a man didn't live in a fish's stomach for a week.
Okay, I have to add though, the traditional view of that story was that Jonah died for 3 days in the whale, and then came back to life. That's the traditional.
I don't think that makes it any better.
I wouldn't even agree with that. I need you to cite your source if you're going to say something like that, because that is traditional traditional Jewish story, because it's not a Christian story, it's a Jewish story.
Yeah, that is the traditional Jewish interpretation, that he died. That's why it was a type and shadow of Jesus dying and resurrecting. You didn't eat fish out of the off of the
whale. Casey. All right, so Casey, are you ready to accept Jesus Christ as your personal savior again?
That's why I asked Sam what he views of it, because
what about Pinocchio's dad?
In my opinion, liberal Christianity is the
enemy.
sinking. Yes, is the sinking stepping stone between Christianity and agnosticism.
Cool.
And I'm here on the other side of the river with open arms for you.
I mean, you can say that, but I'm still heavily. I don't know what you want me to say. Like, I think the irony of it is, like, you can say that, but liberal Christianity, A, saved my faith. B, I'm still heavily invested in it. Like, and it's like my entire, like, that, so much of my life is wrapped up in it. Like, so I think the irony, like, that's ironic to me. Is that, yeah, for some people, it's like a drifting out of it. For some people, it's a reimagining of their faith. Like, for me, it saved it. So if that means, I could have ended up like all the kids you went to high school with, who are fedora wearing Reddit atheists.
Dude, he's just in it for the occasional free crackers and grape juice.
Yeah,
I think that.
Hey, my church uses wine, so I actually I get to drink wine on Sunday morning.
Lib.
Oh my god. Okay, I think we need to call it here.
I think we need a part 2.
Definitely part 2.
You can be our resident conservative.
Because I'll be honest, I was really excited for the discussion to get to this point. And
I know I was really adamant. I actually was like thinking ahead of time. Like, I really feel like I need to try not to get it to this point. Like,
why?
Because I don't know. I'm not,
dude. One's gonna listen to a podcast when everyone's just laughing. You got to fight.
You're right. You do need some meat to it, and I think you do need some arguments. Look,
do I get some ad revenue for that?
Yeah. Once we start getting some once we get ads, maybe.
Manscaped.
We're paying.
Nesquik.
Yeah, I want Manscaped. Hey, do you want smooth balls?
Yes, please.
Oh God. Well, maybe.
Well,
I don't. We'll see. I like these arguments. I'm like, I obviously will take them and have a good time with them. I think a lot of our friendship.
If we do a part 2, though, you have to pick one top. This was great, by the way. This was actually really fun.
Yeah, I love this.
I knew it would be fun. What you need to do is like pick like a single. Well, this is your podcast. You can do whatever the frick you want, but I'm just saying that if you want to dive down into that wormhole, like, pick a specific area, and then we'll just focus on that the whole time.
Yeah, it's just not like we're trying not to have a Christian podcast. So debating Christian theology for an hour and a half seems
there's only one Christian on this show.
Yeah. Is that? I'm assuming you meaning you, not, forgetting that it's not your podcast, you narcissistic fuck.
Oh, I had to throw that. Dude, I literally have that written down in Notepad++ all day to say in this.
Yeah. You have to go back to hiding your Facebook post from him.
Yeah.
What's that?
He said you have to go back to hiding your Facebook post from him.
Oh, poor Sam. I was not that.
That was God. I almost was like going to give you a hard time with that at the top of the episode.
I literally wasn't mad. I wanted to. Someone told me about it, and I was like,
"Who told you?" I got to know who told you about it.
I wasn't mad. I've never been mad.
I'm going to go through a mutual friends, and I'm going to message every single one of them. So you might want to tell me now.
Go for it.
I told him, I was like, I tried so hard to get Chad to spill the beans on
it. All I know is we probably have like 500 mutual friends, so go at it.
I know. It's going to take me a while. Oh God! All right.
Oh man. Dude,
part 2.
It's always great to talk to you.
Yeah, this was an awesome time, man. Thanks for hanging out.